So this week, we're doing something different. And we're doing it different because I didn't put out a podcast last week. And yet, here is the irony: I recorded one. But in the whole process of everything, I gave up, I think, what is my biggest superpower. And that was my own voice. See, yes, I recorded it. Yes, I was the one who showed up for it and everything else. But what I also did is I overstepped in the AI world. And by that, what I mean is I put too much emphasis into letting AI help me to write out a podcast. Now, if you've been a listener of the podcast for quite a while, you know we chase squirrels. It's just how we roll around here. And the way that we're able to chase squirrels is the fact that I don't necessarily follow a script of any sort. I follow a very loose outline. This particular episode is a really loose outline. And that is partly so that I can recenter myself. See, the episode that was supposed to come out last week, the sad part is I know it was a really good episode, but it's not in alignment. Because while a lot of the things are what I believe and a lot of the things are what I think, the script, the outline, the everything that ChatGPT was able to put together was so good and so full that I found that I spent too much time reading what it said rather than putting my own stories into it, rather than infusing myself into it. And again, like I said, it's all the things that I believe. It's all the things that I agree with, because I'm not just going to say it because it was on a piece of paper. It's because I spent the time to do the research, to do the planning, to actually write it out, just with the help of AI. But ultimately, it didn't flow. And let's be honest, you would have been able to tell. You've listened to other podcasts of mine. You know when I show up as me and what this episode would have been, because it was not going to have been me. And so I didn't release it. And then I had to think long and hard, what was it? And that's where this episode comes from. And we're in a world of AI. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. There is AI. We all use AI. You quite likely use AI. But the critical key to that is not losing your own voice to AI. And I think that's why that episode I struggled so hard with, because even to do an opening for it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. Here, help me write an opener. And it was good. It was really good. But then I found I was stumbling over my words because I was too focused on reading what was written rather than just going for it. And I'm seeing it more and more and more in marketing. I'm seeing it with captions that you can totally tell are written by AI. I'm seeing it now with travel advisors who have taken a photo of themselves, typically on vacation, and then they've either given the audio into AI or they've just written it out and AI knows their voice well enough, because I can tell it's their voice. But the facial expressions, I can tell, are not an authentic video. And so now we're having this disconnect. And as we're moving into a new era with AI, with everything else, I think the necessity to be able to trust people is going to be that much stronger. Because again, anybody can create AI. Anybody can create something using AI. Anybody can read a script that somebody else has written, but it doesn't mean that it's actually going to show up or that they actually know what the freak they're talking about. I'm seeing it more and more and more where we have people who have never actually lived that life, who have never actually put in the push-ups, done the reps, done what needs to be done in order to be able to help you. And yet here they are, they've gone to ChatGPT to learn how to do it. They don't have that data that they need to back it up, to know that that is in fact actually going to work or not going to work, or this part of it will work, but then we're going to get to here. And these are the variables, because in the end, ultimately, we're all living a very human experience. And the problem when we take the human element out of it is that then it's not for us. And so the more that I thought about that episode, and I am going to bring a little bit of the content of that episode into this one because it actually connects so well. But it's making sure you're authentically showing up, that it is you. Don't get me wrong. I do not enjoy showing up on video, but I do show up on video because I know that it's important for my business. I know that it's important for you to be able to connect with me. That's why I do a podcast. That's also why the podcast has to sound like me, not just in terms of voice, but in terms of cadence, in terms of not being scripted. Because if suddenly I came out and everything was scripted, you would want to know where the heck I went, because that wasn't me. And the same is true for your clients. They want to know where you are. And if you think you're tricking people into them not knowing that you've used AI, I promise you, the only one you're tricking is yourself. And I think that was really and truly part of it. Is I kept listening to it and I was like, I don't sound like myself because I read too much. And I genuinely do very little reading when I do my podcast, because I only ever work from outlines. I only ever work from story prompts. In fact, if I look at the notes I have for today, I have 5 lines, and the longest one had 5 words on it. Most of them only have 2. Actually, let me explain to you what's the outline of this. AI authenticity, being you, making waves, not everyone will like it, and that's a them problem. That is the entire outline, the entire amount of notes that I have for this podcast going in. That was a very different experience than a fully outlined, fully scripted, fully everything episode. And you would be able to tell. And I know that you'll have people who'll be like, oh, nobody will ever be able to. There is always going to be a part of them that's going to be able to tell. I saw something recently where it was do it on autopilot, set and forget. There is no part of business that is ever going to be set and forget, or that AI is always going to run it, or that there are so many elements of business that you've still got to keep your hands on the steering wheel, because you never know when something unexpected is going to come along. You never know when a button gets switched. In fact, this particular week, I am working on the 2026 planning workshop that we're doing on December 4th. And Google somehow has changed all of the settings for their Google documents and other such. So I'm not able to download them the way that I used to, or be able to share them the way that I used to be able to. And yet, if I didn't take that next step to test it in multiple ways, I never would have known that. Why? Because I did it the same way I've always done it. So if I was to have done it as a set and forget, it never would have worked. And again, so much of AI, I'm seeing set and forget. Do it once, never touch it again. And that worries me as we go into 2026. It worries me because I think there's becoming a little too much reliance on it and a willingness to give up our own voice. So the question becomes, are you willing to give up your voice? Are you willing to give up who you are, to become nameless, faceless, and to fade away? And some people will say, heck yeah, because I just want to be able to do this and I want to be able to do that and other such. But your only, And I want to repeat the emphasis on only, differentiator in the industry, and I mean travel as a whole, is you. You are the most powerful, the most prominent, the most impactful asset in your business. And if you are just handing everything off to AI without a second thought, you are no longer different. You are no longer a differentiator because you are no longer a variable in the process. Authenticity has never been more important. I, a couple of months ago, attended a session where they brought in somebody who was showing us their AI tool, which the tool was amazing. And it's allowed them to be able to open a new business in an industry they've never been a part of. But because they understood messaging and they understood AI, they have now positioned themselves as an expert. And as I listen to their content, the hairs on the back of my neck stand up because I see why they're getting popular. I also have a lived experience that tells me they don't. That they don't know what they're talking about, that they don't know what they're doing. And in fact, I'm very concerned for the harm that they could possibly be doing. But they've been using AI, and AI is just going to put this all together. Actually, what the words were was, don't worry, AI will fill in all the gaps. I think the possibility for AI is absolutely endless. But we also have a responsibility to ourselves to not get lost in it. In this last couple of weeks, especially, I have discovered or started using where I've been taking all of the coaching calls for all of the different programs that I'm in, be it my one-to-ones, be it the Travel Advisor Success Studio, whatever it is. And I am taking the transcript of those calls and I'm running it through AI to pull out what I've been saying, what I put in there, because quite frankly, there's a lot of times, especially when I'm in a coaching call, especially with the Travel Advisor Success Studio, when advisors are coming in and they're asking questions, and it's all sorts of different types of questions. When the call is done, a lot of times I forget what those questions are. So to be able to go back, and we're now pulling transcripts from several months ago and discovering what, when it's summarizing it, and then it's pulling out questions, but then it's also giving me possible content that we can create based off of those questions that were asked. There is a massive wealth of possibility that's coming up in that. And I would not have had the ability, the resources, the time, the energy to pull any of that if I was having to listen to every call, if I was having to go through and write those questions myself. But instead, in a matter of minutes, I'm able to transcribe a 90-minute coaching call. I'm able to run it through a GPT that we've built out, that we're able to pull it and segment it and get future possible content. We're able to grab sound bites out of it. We're able to, all of these things that we're able to do, which is going to make our life better. It's going to make our business better. And it's most importantly going to make it so we can help travel advisors better. But there's a limit to that. And that's what I noticed last week with recording that podcast that I never released. And I'm not going to. In that, the genius of that, the genius of using the coaching calls to build that, is that it's my words. It's the way I talk. But more importantly, it was my thoughts. Chatty just took it and put it in a method that I was able to repurpose, to summarize, to be able to take, well, we had this conversation and look at all the possibilities of other conversations that it opens up. Look at all of the other things that we could talk about. Or because Chatty doesn't have a personality, Chatty doesn't have emotions, it's able to distill it and put it together and say, okay, this is what was said. And when it says it the way that it says it, it's like, oh, that could also go in this direction or that direction. Or we could go deeper on this, that, or the other. Or better yet, it takes the summary because it's going to take from this advisor and this advisor and this advisor. And if you pull them all together, well, then that combination creates this over here. I'm able to now use that in order to create something new, in order to create something that's in my voice, that is authentic to what I want to talk about. I'm going to be talking over the next couple of weeks about some of the changes that we're making at Art of Selling Travel. Because one, when you're coming to the end of the year, it's a great time to do reflection. It is a phenomenal time to reflect on the business that you've had, the business you're building, and where it is you want to go. But it's also a great time to realize what doesn't work, what isn't paying off. And I'm not talking necessarily about money. In fact, when we do our workshop, we're going to be talking a lot more about energy and effort and resources than we are actual money. Because the energy and effort and the way you feel about things has probably a bigger impact on the actual bottom line than money coming in, which I know if you're an accountant person, you're probably cringing already, but they are deeply, deeply tied together. And so we're going to be talking about what that looks like, which is where making waves came from. Because I don't know about you, but I was raised to just not make waves. You want to keep a low profile because you don't want to make waves. Well, guess what? That we're headed into a new era. We are headed into a very different season where we are about to make a whole lot of freaking waves. There's going to be a lot of people that don't like it. Like a lot of people who don't like when you make waves. There's going to be a whole lot of people that don't like it when I make waves. But that's a them problem. That's not a me problem. That's a them problem. Because so long as I am holding in integrity and authenticity to who I am, I don't get to control how other people perceive me. I don't get to control other people's opinions of me. And more importantly, I don't need to care. This summer, as what was it called? The Life of the Showgirl podcast or album was being released. Taylor Swift had appeared on the New Heights podcast. And she had a great segment in there where she was talking about the fact that there's like other people's opinions of her aren't any of her own aren't any a part of her business. She said, people will write things about me and it's still not any part of my business. And I thought that was really fascinating. But then she also said something to the effect of, you have to treat your energy like it's really expensive and understand not everybody can afford it. And that one is a line that I keep replaying. And as I move into 2026 and set new boundaries for myself, that's going to be the first thing. I've already started the process of putting some of those boundaries in place. But a lot of times we set goals, we set this. No, I set boundaries. And after the 2025 that I've had, putting boundaries in place is a huge first step. And I think it's going to be the step that's going to make all the difference. Not everybody's going to like it. And that's true no matter what. You can use AI and it does not mean anybody else is going to like you more than they do right now. There's a lot of people who want to use AI because they want that perfect shot, that perfect background, that perfect look, that perfect everything, that you're always making eye contact, that you're always whatever the case may be. But here's the secret. That's not going to make anybody like you any more or any less. Actually, it might make them like you a little less. Because as I was saying, there's been this flood of things I've seen on social media where I know that it started as a photo and then they used AI to turn it into a video where they're talking, because the mouth and the eyes, first off, do not connect. What's coming out of the mouth does not match what's going on the rest of the face. But also, too, the mouth isn't lining up to what is actually being said. And when that's the case, how do people trust you? How do people know that it's actually you behind the scenes? How do people know that you're who you say you are? Think about it for a moment. When you're getting a new referral or getting a new client, like somebody who's a brand new client to you from nowhere else, maybe they've seen your content on social media, maybe they Googled and they got you. You're potentially asking them to hand over thousands, tens of thousands, and in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And yet, they don't even know if you're a real human. They don't know if they're being catfished. Because people can tell when things are written by AI. People can tell when a video isn't real. People can tell when you're not being authentic. I've walked into rooms and been able to tell just from the energy of somebody right off that they are not my jam, or that they're not who they say they are. The easiest, fastest, and most efficient way to be in alignment is just simply to be authentically you and to show up as authentically you. And stop worrying about how everything looks or everything sounds or the perfection of this or the perfection of that. People would far rather have you show up as authentically you than everything be perfect. And I think we're going to leave it here. The number one thing that caught me about that podcast that I recorded, I wasn't authentic. And therefore, it was the most choppy, stutter-filled, uncomfortable thing that I've recorded. See, when you're not in authenticity, when you're not in integrity to yourself, to what you're creating, people will be able to tell. I am not saying that this is all about how much content you have to create or how much this or how much that. It is simply the reminder that your audience, your potential client, your future business is dependent on who it is that you are. And the easiest way for people to know who you are is just simply to show up as you. Because if you have to create an alternative character, if you have to create an alternative reality, that sounds exhausting. I was at a conference once in Toronto and sat down at the lunch table with somebody from my community, and she introduced me to a colleague of hers, and will never forget when she said to me, she goes, "Have you ever listened to an artist on Spotify and you like them, but then when you go to their concert, you just like love them?" She goes, "That's how I feel about you. Like, you are who you are on the podcast." And I just remembered laughing in that moment. And I said, well, heck yeah, I don't have energy or time or capacity to be more than just me. But as I've been recording in the last couple of weeks here, and as we're getting ready to build out a phenomenal 2026, that story comes back to me. I don't have the energy to be more than me. And I'm betting you don't have the energy to be more than you. business coach of mine says burnout comes when your body says yes, but your soul says no. Be inauthentic. Be in authenticity, rather. Be in authenticity to yourself. And you just might discover how much easier things get. Because you're not trying to please anybody else. You're just simply being you. 2026 is going to be all about being me. It is going to be about the boundaries that I put in place and then the waves that I will be making. Because I'm here to make some waves, and I mean some really, really big waves in 2026. And I don't think I have been this excited for business in a very long time. I don't think I've been this excited for the possibilities of what could happen, the potential of what's there. And I want you to be able to have an opportunity to feel exactly that way as well. We're going to wrap it up here. In the meantime, if you are not already following the show, please go ahead, hit the follow button, leave a review. That helps us to be able to reach more travel advisors. I would be eternally grateful for that. And also too, if you know of another travel advisor that this could help, please share it to them as well. I would love for you to help another travel advisor. Until next time, happy selling.